Why you can't lose weight in menopause. Look, the reason why is not all tied to hormones. It's not some mysterious, oh, your estrogen dropped and your testosterone and progesterone are also low. And so, of course, you're going to have trouble. I don't think we get to blame hormones like the bad girls that were in junior high. We don't get to point our finger and say, well, it's that. It's often the signs and symptoms those hormones are giving us, and sometimes one of those is we can't lose weight, is just that, a sign and a symptom that some of your habits, daily, weekly, monthly, are not working for you right now. So it's a clue to what do we need to look at? What can I change? So based on the symptom being that, then there's this. That's what the Flipping 50 After Fitness Formula for Women formula is all about. So figuring that out, working backwards. But rather than paint that picture and go through that, today I have an expert. So Lisa Goldberg is a friend and a nutritionist and has 2 decades of experience working with people toward permanent weight loss. And isn't that what we all really want? But I'm going to tell you this, that I recently had a conversation with someone who had been going through the things that so many women do, roller coaster diets for decades, starting, in junior high or high school, when you want to look better for prom or homecoming or the cute boy or that whatever it is. Just the feeling not enough. And maybe because of the example we had with our mom or an older sister, or just because the media said we needed to, we should, something else looks better than we do. And so many reasons women have dieted throughout, and we're still dieting, right? Because it didn't actually stick. You lose weight, maybe you do, and then it comes back with a vengeance. And you know the way it works. When you lose weight, you lose a % of muscle and fat. And because you lose muscle, your metabolism slows. And when you regain weight, it is 100% fat. And you go on through that cycle too many times and you're fatter than when you started, right? And here's what happens. We get ingrained that the only way to lose weight is counting calories or counting points, if you will, and that we need to exercise more and eat less. And if you're just joining right now, I'm always paranoid about saying that out loud because that is not what I want you to do. But we hear it and it's the dogma and it's still between our ears because it's really hard to lose that stuff. If we say hit delete, we can do that on a computer. And unfortunately, it happens way too many times for me when I don't hit delete and I'm like, where is that? Right? And yet in our heads, there are certain things like our memory feels like it's going, except for things like this. We keep remembering, we default to the same pattern, even though we have all the evidence that it's never worked before. And that's really what dieting is. I talked to a woman who tried a different method of weight loss than she'd ever tried before in her life. And she went away on vacation for like 2.5, 3 weeks, a long time. And we're talking European, lots of different opportunities to maybe self-sabotage. But what she did is empowered herself when she went. She said, look, I said, I'm just going to participate in everything. I'm not going to, deny myself, deprive myself, or say I can't eat that and make myself special, about the foods I need or had to have. And she got back and I said, well, how'd it go? She said, actually, I was surprised, but I lost 3 pounds, and that was fantastic. But a week later, shall I say, I realized that she'd done like a 5 or 6 day, like pretty stringent diet, and we're talking fasting. It's so popular. And I had to scratch my head. Wait a minute. Like, why would you do that? Because what you did worked. You proved that just changing the way you think about food works. And this is actually the best way to long-term weight loss and sustaining it. And nobody ever talks, and we don't even talk about it today on this show. We don't talk about monitoring muscle and making sure that when we lose weight, we're losing only fat weight, we're not losing muscle. Because if you lose weight quickly, chances are you're losing a big percent of muscle. So although we don't talk about that today, please know that it is first and foremost very important to all of us. We have a sense of urgency, or should, about holding on to lean muscle mass. In fact, gaining lean muscle mass. It is the only way to improve your metabolism without accelerating your age. If you're trying to exercise more and eat less, you're aging yourself faster. Not really what we're up for, right? All right. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, but most of all, we hope to inspire you. It can be different. And today, weight loss, dieting can be different. You deserve to have energy and vitality for this second and better half. And my guest today is bringing it. Lisa Goldberg is a nutritionist and weight loss coach with a master's degree in clinical nutrition from New York University. She's an author, certified nutrition specialist, and certified dietitian / nutritionist. Lisa's been coaching clients for over 20 years. She focuses on mindset change, mindful eating, habit, and behavior change. She teaches her clients how to break their old patterns around food and eating so they can end their struggle with emotional eating that leads to yo-yo dieting. Her clients create sustainable lifestyle changes that empower them to change their relationship with food and lose unwanted weight for good. Lisa's the author of the book, Food Fight: Winning the Battle with Food and Eating to Achieve Sustainable Weight Loss, and it's available on Amazon. In 2015, Lisa expanded her practice to coach remotely, and she now coaches clients virtually all over the world. Her contact information will be in the show notes. Today's notes are at flipping50.com/lose weight in menopause. Let's dive into this episode. Lisa, I'm so glad you're here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you, Deborah.
All right. I am going to beat the dead horse, so pardon me, all of you listeners, but here's the deal. We all know diets never work for the long term, but I have to ask you, what's the why behind that, Lisa? And then the bigger question I'm going to ask is, why do we continue to go back to them if we know they don't work?
That's the crazy part, right? That's the definition of insanity.
Right.
So diets don't work because when somebody goes on a diet, they do something, it's usually something that's not sustainable, right? They're cutting out carbs, or they're cutting out sugar, or they're doing low fat, or they're doing something in order to lose the weight that's not sustainable for the long term. And it's a quick fix, what most of these diets do. And also, when you go on a diet, people tend to really reduce their calories drastically compared to what they were doing, so they lose weight quickly. And that's also not a realistic way of living, which is why the weight comes back so quickly. So most people cut out all of the foods they love because we've been taught, and I feel like we've been taught the wrong way to lose weight, because anybody who thinks about losing weight, they think I have to stop drinking wine, I have to cut out bread, I'm not allowed to eat cookies, right? I'm not supposed to, right? God forbid I have a slice of pizza. While I'm trying to lose weight, then they feel like they've done something wrong, they beat themselves up, and then the cycle starts all over again. And so, it's just people are confused, I feel like, about what they need to do to really lose weight and keep that weight off for good. And it's not by restricting or depriving yourself to weight loss.
I love that. And So dive into that. Why do we keep reverting to it though? I mean, even in our lives, by the time we're in our 40s, certainly, if not before, but in our 50s or 60s, if you've ever tried to lose weight in your life, I mean, I've got to believe that almost every woman's hand went up and you're walking down the street and people are looking at you, but there's that. But we still kind of we default to that same thing. Why do we do that?
Yeah, here's why. Well, first, our brain is wired for habit. And second, kind of as I said earlier, we've been really taught, forever, all of the information that's out there for the most part. Like the big marketing push by the dieting industry is to go on a diet. And there's a gazillion different ones out there. And so people, especially women, often tend to blame themselves when something's not working, when the diet's not working. They think, I wasn't perfect, I did it wrong, I shouldn't have eaten that cookie or that piece of bread, so therefore I blew it. And they're always thinking that there's something better out there. I mean, I remember once working with a client who, she was in the process doing what we were doing. She was doing great. But then she said to me, a friend of mine told me that she was just doing, keto and she lost 20 pounds really quickly. And I'm like, well, listen, if you think you could stay doing keto for the rest of your life, go ahead and do keto. But if you think you're just going to lose your 20 pounds and go back to doing whatever it was that you were doing, let's stay doing what we're doing. People still try to do the same thing because they think that there's something better out there that they haven't done or they haven't tried, right? Well, I've counted points and that didn't work. I've counted calories and that didn't work. Maybe I need to starve myself for several hours during the day. Maybe I need to eat one meal a day, right? Maybe I
Yeah.
just don't have enough willpower, right? Maybe I need more discipline. Maybe there's just something wrong with me, which breaks my heart the most when I hear a woman say, I feel like there's something wrong with me.
Gosh. Okay. So I want to talk to this just a second. So I think there's so much here to unpack, and I'm actually though excited, even though we are talking about a topic that, I mean, we could say it's evergreen, right? But it is, a continually visited topic because we do have a weight problem. We have an obesity problem
Mm-hmm.
in the United States. And we need to address this, and we need to address the so many whys, the layers of whys. But even if people do lose weight, and why do they struggle keeping it off? It is one. And my question, I have a habit of doing this, don't I?
Uh-huh.
Is it physiology, or is it psychology, or is it both?
Well, I think it could be both, but let's start with the psychology part first, because I feel like for so many people, it is the psychology.
Mm.
Our brains, we learn what we learn from the time we're very young. So often times when I work with my clients who do struggle with emotional eating, yo-yo dieting, a lot of my clients have been on diet since they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. So really young. And so this is what they know, is to go on a diet. They're either being good or they're either being bad. Oftentimes we get the message, like I speak to a lot of clients whose parents restricted them. They weren't allowed to eat the cookies. They weren't allowed to have sugar. So when they went to their friend's house, they went crazy, or they would buy food and hide food in their bedroom and eat when nobody was watching, which develops an unhealthy relationship with food. Right now, I'm actually working with a client right now who struggles with that, and she doesn't eat in front of her family because she's afraid to be judged. So, regardless of how old she is, she'll still think about taking food to her room and eating in hiding. Right. So there's the psychology, because our brain is wired for habit, and our brain is wired based on our beliefs. And oftentimes the messages that we get as children, about not being good enough, about, you should be better, you should do this better, you should be smarter, prettier, or better at that sport, whatever it is. Or sometimes it just takes a parent to say something like, I remember my dad, right? For the longest time, I said, I have fat thiophobia, right? Because when I was like a teenager, my dad said, and my sister was, an athletic. I was on, she was in like a cheerleader. I was a runner. And my dad said something like, why do you girls have such big legs? We weren't fat, we were muscular.
Yeah,
But
right.
you hear that from a parent, especially your father, and you interpret it in a different way.
And you're still talking about it decades later.
Well, but here's the thing,
Mm.
stuff like that you never forget.
Yeah.
So for a woman or even a man whose family said something like, you should lose weight, or you shouldn't eat that, or why are you eating that? Right? That's the stuff that stays with you. And you always think
Mhm.
there's something wrong with you. Or if when you were 8 years old, your mom takes you to a diet doctor, or at 12 years old, your mom takes you to Weight Watchers. You think, well, I'm just not good enough the way I am. She doesn't love me the way I am. I have to be better. I have to be different. I have to be thinner in order to gain my parents' approval.
So I have to ask this question. And we were talking in the green room about how very important this is, but breaking habits that you've always had based on beliefs you've always had is not easy about anything. And then there's food, and you throw in that it's emotional from the time we were born. I mean, everything wants to keep firing that same old way, go through the same old patterns. How is it that you get people that you work with to break the pattern, stop the cycle?
Well, what we first do is once we start to work together, their awareness starts to raise, right? So it's about raising your awareness because the thing is, the self talk, the conversation that goes on in your head has been going on for so long that people don't even hear the messaging that they give themselves. And I always say to my clients, when you emotionally eat, you're actually giving yourself permission to do so. Because what somebody, the lines are usually typically, I'll be better tomorrow,
Hmm.
right? It's just a little bit, what difference does it make?
Hmm.
I blew it, so I'm going to start again on Monday. And so there's a pattern of thoughts that go around thinking. Most people, I always say, when you're justifying eating something, well, I had a light lunch and, it's only one cookie. The minute you hear yourself justifying why you should eat something, don't eat it because you're only going to feel bad about it later.
Mm.
Right? So there's a pattern that people have to start to notice what their habits are. So many times people a habit a lot of people have is they walk into the house from work, they put down their stuff, they go into the kitchen, they open the refrigerator. They're not necessarily hungry, but the
Hmm.
cabinets and the refrigerator doors get opened and they're looking. Sometimes they may take something, sometimes they may not, but the habit is to go in there and do that, right? So
Hmm.
it's just a wired in habit. But the most important thing and the way I get my clients to break their patterns is once they're noticed and they're hyper aware, and I get them connected to listening to their own thoughts that run through their head, then they start to understand why they do what they do because your actions will always follow your thoughts. So we don't do anything without a thought preceding it, right? When
Mm.
we're lying in bed in the morning and we want to get up, we're thinking, I'm going to get up out of bed and go to the bathroom.
Can I ask you a challenging question? So, this is
Yeah.
with total respect, but isn't a habit almost when your body's acting on automatic and we're not necessarily thinking about it because it's so programmed in?
Yes, it is. But once you start noticing, right? So it's so programmed in, like brushing your teeth, right? It's just if you
Mm.
notice your morning routine, chances are, especially Monday through Friday, your morning routine is exactly the same. The chances of you doing something completely different, unless you're planning on doing something completely different, is slim. But the point is, we're thinking about it. There's a thought that precedes it. So when you're thinking about something to eat, right? It's either because you're hungry or because it's a habit or because you're emotionally triggered or because there's some kind of trigger, which could just be the time of day. I mean, how often do you hear your clients say, it's like around 4 o'clock and I just feel like I want something to eat, right? I
Mhm.
just feel like
Yeah.
eating, right? I feel like isn't I'm hungry,
That's true.
right? Because I feel like I'm hungry is more of a declaration. We know it. Our body needs fuel.
Mhm.
But I think I feel like is more habitual, or we know oftentimes people who are emotionally triggered turn to food to distract or, stuff down the emotion. And that's what they're using food for.
So
But
interesting.
it's really, and I mean, and it's kind of really, I really love this work, especially when the client actually, like I had a client tell me her teenage sons really frustrate her, and that frustrate her, and they were at dinner, um, And I don't know what the conversation was, but she was feeling really frustrated. She goes into the kitchen. She was thinking thinking about dessert, and she was just going to go get herself dessert and eat it right then and there in the kitchen. But since we had been doing this work, she made the connection of how she was feeling and the conversation she was just having. And what she was feeling was frustration. And her thought was to go eat that thing because, who cares, right? I don't care.
Right. Right.
But of course she cares because she wants to lose weight. But now that her awareness is heightened of the thoughts in her head, she did something different. She left the kitchen and she went into her bedroom, and she thought, well, it probably wasn't the best thing to do to my family, like abandon them. But I was like, good for you that you put yourself first and you gave yourself that pause in that moment. And she broke the pattern. It was a pattern interrupt. She broke the pattern by leaving the kitchen, by hearing the thought that typically would have her just putting food in her mouth that she wasn't hungry for because of her frustration.
That is so good. So disrupting our schedule, like getting out of our environment, can be really helpful. Do you think? Do you find that that's true?
Yeah. I mean, I help my clients, find what I call plan Bs, right? Because so often I hear, but what do I do in the moment? Because the moment they're triggered and they're emotional and they feel like opening every cabinet in the kitchen and eating something out of it, right? There's this impulse. It's like impulsive, compulsive urge to eat. And so I hear, what do I do in the moment? And if you could hear your own thoughts, if in the moment your plan B is leave the room, go out to the backyard, put the leash on the dog and go out for a walk, just break the pattern of being in the kitchen, change your thought pattern once you hear and once because anybody who emotionally eats or binge eats knows in advance what they're about to do because they've done it so many times before.
That was a mic drop right there. Wow. Okay. And this, I feel like I may be backpedaling, but I'm going to ask it again because I think this topic is just so great. You've got such a good nugget. I mean, why do so many people know what to do, but not do it?
Well, that's the thing, because they don't know how to change their mindset, their thinking. They don't understand that their thoughts that they've been thinking all their life when they struggle with food, weight, and dieting have been self-sabotaging thoughts that repeat over and over and over again. And it is because of what they believe. Most women who struggle with their weight and want to lose weight don't even really believe that they can actually lose the weight. I hear that so often, even from clients that I'm working with. They have this inner belief, like they don't even want to admit it to themselves, but they're just like, I don't really believe that I could do it because it's been so hard for me. And when you believe that, your brain looks for evidence to back up what you believe. Mm-hmm. And so they will sabotage their efforts. And then the conversation is, well, see there, I told you, you couldn't do it anyway. Right?
Right. You're right.
So that's why people know. And so here's what I say, and I'm doing something. My belief is to teach people the right way to lose weight, the right way to weight loss. And here's why. And this is the analogy that I give, because I hear from most of my clients are truly, successful, dynamic women who, I've had women say to me, I could run like this $1 million company, but I can't lose weight and keep it off. I don't understand. Like, what's the matter with me? I'm really beginning to think that there's something wrong with me. So I said to her, imagine this. Imagine when you started your career. When you went into training, somebody showed you the wrong way to do your job. They gave you all the wrong information, right? They told you the wrong way to be successful and in your career. Do you think you'd be where you are right now? Of course not. You'd be fired a million times because you wouldn't know what you were doing, or you wouldn't know what to do to be successful in the job that you were given. Weight loss is the same, because everyone's been told you need to cut out your carbs, you need to cut out the wine, you need to cut out the cookies, you need to run your butt off for and exercise 7 days a week, what is it? Calories in, calories out, and that's what it's about. And that's what people try to do over and over and over again. So I feel like people have been given the wrong information to lose weight. Nobody said to them, well, what do you believe about yourself? How do you feel about yourself? What is your relationship with food, right? Do you eat when you're not hungry? Do you stop when you're content? Do you clean your plate because that's what you were taught from your family, that you don't get dessert unless you clean your plate, or children are starving all across, the universe? And so
Do you
you have
know my parents?
exactly, right? You have to finish your plate because there's children starving on every continent. So you have to eat for them,
You don't
right?
know how many hours I sat there when everybody else left trying to feed the dog or finish it one way or the other. Yes.
And, so the messaging that you got from that, right, was the wrong messaging. And
I hated that tater tot casserole.
right, right. And just think about, for all the people that have even been forced to eat food they don't like, or to take that last bite, you can't leave the table, 2 more bites, or even as 2 and 3-year-old toddlers, right? You have to have a few more bites. You have to have a few more bites. But
Yes.
we are born with the mechanism as babies to cry when we need food, when we're hungry, and we stop when we're full. And it's really, by no fault of our parents, if they knew better, to force us to finish eating. But as babies, if you watch like I don't know, a 1-year-old, when they're getting spoon fed with like baby food, when they're done, they push that spoon away, they turn their face away. They're like, my belly is full. They can't verbalize it yet, but they tell you because they know. We know. And now we override those signals because we've been stuffing the food down for so long that we think that we're only done eating when our bellies are stuffed.
Mm.
And therefore, when your belly's stuffed, you've already put too much food in your body.
That is tough, really tough. Okay, so summarize all that. What really needs to change in order for somebody to lose weight for good?
What really needs to change is their thinking. And here's the thing, like, and I know this to be true, you can't stop the old thoughts from coming, right? Like, let's
Right.
take an example. Like, people when they're sick, right? All they want to do is feed themselves, right? I feel bad, poor me, woe is me. I'm going to eat that croissant, or I'm going to eat that donut. I deserve to eat that donut because, I don't feel well, right? So they kind of take advantage and justify eating the donut because they're sick. So clients that do that are now sick, they might have that thought about wanting to feed themselves because they feel bad for themselves because they don't feel well. But then the next thought comes in after doing this work and it says, why would I do that? That's completely ridiculous. That's not going to make me feel better. That's not going to make me unsick, right? I'm not even hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So there's their logical voice that learns to speak up and speak louder because what I refer to as the rabbit hole voice has been taking over, right? What difference does it make? I'll be better tomorrow. I blew it, so I ate 2 cookies. I may as well eat 25 cookies because I blew it by eating 2, so I may as well eat more and start again tomorrow. That's the rabbit hole voice. But when I speak to people, they're like, oh my God, that's me. I get it. Like, they laugh because they know it's true. So what needs to change is the way you think, your logical mind, because here's what's so frustrating. Everybody knows what they should be doing. They're smart, intelligent people, and they know what healthy eating looks like, but they don't know how to overcome the habits and behaviors and their own self-talk that tells them to eat when they're not hungry, that tells them to clear their plate. They don't even recognize the conversation in their head. So, and I call it a dance between your head, your heart, and your belly. You think with your head, you feel with your heart, and your belly actually tells you when it needs food and when it doesn't.
So powerful. I feel like you've kind of said, there are these steps to take to get to weight loss, but ultimately we go right for like the third step and we skip 1 and 2. And that's why it can't be permanent. We have to actually pull back and do the what I think is really harder work, because we all like to go to the tangible. And then when we have to get inside our own heads and our
Well,
hearts.
exactly. So the easy thing is to change your food. And here's what I say, and this is really important for everybody to hear. How you eat to lose the weight is how you need to keep eating to maintain the weight you've lost, which is
Amen.
why my clients are drinking wine, they're eating some bread, they're having some dessert, they're going on vacation, they're losing weight. So when they do that again without me, they know what to do.
That's a
because
mic drop. That's so
well,
good.
it's the
Yeah.
truth, because if you cut all of this stuff out while you're losing the weight, then you decide
Hmm.
to add it back in. What's going to happen?
Right.
Right? You do it, and we tend to binge on the things that we restrict. So let's eat these foods, and my focus is on how much and how often in the course of 7 days. So over 7 days, you can have a bacon cheeseburger and fries, right? But can you have it every night and expect to lose or not gain weight? No. But once or twice in a week, sure you can.
Hmm.
Can you have a couple of cookies once or twice in a week and still lose weight? 100%. But it's not the quick weight loss that people are so used to expecting by going on a diet. And
Yeah.
that's part of the wrong way to weight loss, because their expectations are unrealistic.
I saved this for last, and I teased this in the intro, but I want to run this by you. I just had this conversation, and I'm not coaching this particular person, so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't inject. Oh, trust me, I wanted to. Like, I showed restraint, but I just listened, and I had to think, I'm watching you do this, and I'm like, I want to be the lifeguard, and I can't do it because you haven't asked.
Mm-hmm.
But she was successful in, long term, cycling of weight loss and diet attempts her entire adult life. Well, like so many of our listeners, I'm guessing. And yet she's doing something different, an approach she's not even used to doing, and having some success. And she went away. She was like away for a long time, 2.5, 3 weeks, and came back. And she said, while I was there, I took the pressure off. It's like I was going to participate. I wasn't going to go overboard, but I wasn't going to say, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And she said, I participated in everything that I wanted to. And she said, I got home, I lost weight. I lost a few pounds. It was
Mm-hmm.
crazy, right? The next time I talked, she had done like a period of fasting. Like she said, I thought this would be really good to reset after my trip. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, reset what? I mean, it was working. You did it.
Right.
But I feel like it's that reset for so many times today. We've said that what we hear women say is, I'll be better tomorrow, or meaning, I was bad today, I'll be good later. And I think we still have that mentality. But do you see what would you do
Yeah.
with that if you were invited, in fact, to coach with her?
Well, first, one of the things I also do is I get people to change the language. Like my clients get away from using the words good and bad about themselves because it's
Hmm.
judgmental,
Yeah.
right? We use words
Right.
like healthy or unhealthy, mindful or mindless. Because the words, I don't even let them say, I had a treat today, right? Food's not a treat. Puppies get treats. People don't get treats. So I kind of, the words that you use, because this is really about, really at the end of the day, changing your brain. But in regard to this particular person, um, you know, I probably wouldn't have been able to totally refrain from just being like, "Why are you doing that?" Because it's only going to backfire on you sometime in the long run, because it always does, right? So whenever you kind of starve yourself or you restrict yourself, or you should be able to go on vacation and be able to eat. Because I tell people, you're not going on vacation to eat, right? You could eat anywhere, right? You can have a piece of cake or cookies anywhere. You don't have to be, on vacation in order to, but people go, their brains go on vacation mode.
Hmm.
And so it's like, why would you eat so completely differently on vacation than you would in your own normal life? Because in your own normal life, you should be able to indulge yourself, right? Vacation should be no different. But, I kind of just, and I understand about not kind of being asked. So you kind of, if your opinion wasn't asked, you keep it to yourself. But doing this work, depending upon, I might just say, listen, if I could put my 2 cents in, I've seen this, I've been doing this work for over 2 decades. And at some point when you lose weight this way, if it's not something you plan on continue doing once you've lost the weight, if you change it up, you're going to slowly watch the pounds come back on. And there's nothing more devastating than waking up one morning and be like, how did I get here again? How did this happen?
Hmm.
And
So true.
that's typically what happens. I feel like people are so confused with all of the diets that are out there, and we've lost, and sometimes we've been taught the wrong way because, if you've been, I mean, look what you said. You were, almost forced to sit at the table to finish food you didn't like, right? And so that stuff kind of really stays with you until you learn what I call a new way of being around food and eating. And I'm guessing now with what you do and the education that you have and the way you live your life, you've established a new way of being for yourself. So no matter where you are, you eat the same way. You might make a few allowances if you're traveling and you don't want to bring your own food with you, or perhaps you go to the grocery store and just be like, I'm going to go get what I need, which is what I do when I travel, right? I make sure that if I'm in a hotel room, I've got what I typically eat sometimes, at least for maybe just some breakfast or some water or some snacks or something like that. But I don't usually eat in such a different way than I would eat in my routine life at home. And that's what I want to help people try to establish, because it's so much better and it's so much healthier from a health point of view, and just from a mindset, from a bandwidth point of view.
So
Right.
great.
All
Yeah.
that mental bandwidth we spend on, I'm not going to be able to eat that, and I shouldn't be eating this. And oh my God, I'm
Mhm.
going to a wedding. I'm afraid to go to the wedding because I don't trust myself because all that food's going to be there. And, it's just people don't even trust themselves anymore to make a good decision because it's just they have this fear of eating when it comes to weight loss. And so there's so much to unpack, really.
Yeah, let's talk about fear, because we're kind of going into a hotbed of weeks, months, and
Hmm.
events for a lot of people. And I know you have a summit coming up too, which
I
is like
do.
right before the holidays, which I think is very timely, for mindset, for visiting some of these topics. But of course, you have a wide variety of people who are coming on. So can you tease a little bit of it without giving away the whole
100%.
thing?
Exactly. I mean, it was intentional the date I chose because
Mhm.
I wanted to give people great information and food for thought, no pun intended, as they go into the holiday season and a time period where there's lots of food around. And then 2 months after that, what does everybody think about? They think about going on a diet,
Ugh.
right?
Yeah,
So
right.
come Jan 1, that's all people are thinking you're doing, right? And leading up to that, oftentimes they're just like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want and I'll worry about not worry about it on January 1st, right? So in order to get people to start thinking differently, I have a summit. It's called The Right Way to Weight Loss, because as we talked, in this conversation, I want people to learn the right way to lose weight that's sustainable for the long term. So they never have to go on any of these crazy quick fix diets again. And so I am having over 20 experts in the field of health and wellness who are going to speak into the right way to weight loss. And it involves so many topics, not just about the food that we eat, but there's so many things that go into it. Fitness, as you do, is a huge piece of lasting weight loss. And we also have to address, sometimes for some people, it's not just about what they're eating, but the physiological part, right, which we talked about earlier, the psychological part and the physiological part. Sometimes they do have hormone issues or thyroid issues or gut health issues, which is so important. Some people just don't sleep well, right? And all of this is tied into one, our overall health, but our body's ability to lose weight and keep it off. So I, with intention, got some of the most brilliant minds in the health and wellness field who are going to help everybody unpack like the myths and the real stuff. What's real? What's the right way? No crazy short term fixes, but from doctors and health experts like yourself who are in the field, who are going to give reasonable, rational, practical, and logical advice, so people could finally get the help that they need to lose weight and not gain it back again and get off the diet roller coaster for good.
I love that. And say it again, the name of the summit.
The name of the summit is The Right Way to Weight Loss, and we
Yeah.
start on November 1st.
Perfect timing. And by the way, everybody, we're going to put a link in the show notes. If you have like a mind like a steel trap and you're doing something else, you can remember this. It's flipping50.com/right way, no space between those two words for the summit link. That's where you can register. And I will be there. So I know you hear more of me potentially than you ever thought you needed to. But
Yes.
the gift, I think, is you've heard Lisa and you've heard how she works with people. And then she is using her wisdom to draw out of these other experts. So I think through her lens, she's giving you all the other pieces that need to come with it. And it's going to be invaluable. So, Lisa, thanks so much for the work you're doing.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for having me here. And I think it's so important. I feel like there's so much misinformation out there. And, so many people are just at their wits' end because they just don't know what to do. There's in the dieting industry, there's so much information, and so much of it is just that quick fix. If you read something and it's like, lose 10 pounds in 5 days, pass it by. I know it's enticing. I know it's tempting, but you're just going to find yourself back at square one. So come to the summit. Deborah is one of my expert guests that you're going to hear, our conversation. And it's just going to be invaluable information that you could get and you could keep and you could take with you, forever and ever and ever. And it's just something that you really want to hear and you want to be aware of. We talked earlier, raising your awareness is the first step in my process. And when you spend time listening to these experts on this summit, your awareness is going to be so heightened that you're not going to be able to look back and go back the wrong way. It's going to be the right way from here on in.
Fantastic. Okay, friends. So normally at this point in the show, I invite you to drop your questions or your comments in the show notes because I love hearing from you. And those show notes will be at flipping50.com/lose weight in menopause. However, today I'd love you to go to the show notes and click on the link for the summit and join us. Again, it's perfect timing. And if you know a woman, and chances are you do, and I will say this, I think if you are a woman who struggled with your weight and that roller coaster dieting, there are more people, more women potentially in your family who also have, maybe your mom, maybe your daughter, but there's no fault actually here. There's no fingers being pointed, but I think it is something that, it's been passed on, habits and ways and traditions that we deal with food and our emotions around food. They're passed on from one generation to the next. So how otherwise would it be? So share this one. Don't keep it to yourself. And
Yes,
what are you waiting for? Yeah.
Agreed. So
Let's start flipping 50 today.